Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to mentally travel back in time.
Okay, where are we going?
We are going to the mid to late 1990s, but I don't want you to picture, the Friends coffee shop or the grunge flannel shirts.
You're taking us somewhere a little grittier.
I am taking us to the living room, specifically late at night, the glow of the television set. I'm talking about the era of the scramble on cable, the absolute peak of the music video.
Right, on MTV.
And the moment when underground culture started, well, kicking down the door of the mainstream.
It really was a specific collision point in media history. You had the explosion of hip-hop just taking over the charts, and right alongside it, you had the adult entertainment industry, which had been, relegated to the back of video stores, suddenly bubbling up in the pop culture.
Exactly. The lines were getting blurry. You had figures who started in these very niche adult markets suddenly appearing on your cable guide or standing next to the biggest rappers in the world on TRL.
And that is exactly where our subject for today fits in.
It is.
We aren't looking at the super obvious names everyone knows, like a Jenna Jameson.
Yeah.
We are looking at someone who I think arguably represents the working class success story of that specific crossover era.
A perfect way to put it.
We are doing a deep dive into the career of Crystal Knight.
Also known as Crystal K, Crystal Knight.
The spelling is a whole adventure we will get to later, but yes. And for everyone listening, here's the mission for this deep dive.
Let's lay it out.
We are tracing the trajectory of a performer who navigated a pretty stigmatized industry, managed a unique personal branding evolution, including a very public pregnancy,
A huge part of her story.
and found a foothold in the golden era of hip-hop.
And just a quick tone check before we really get into the weeds. Obviously, Crystal Knight's primary industry was adult film. We're going to be discussing that.
We are.
However, our focus is on the business moves, the biography, and the media history.
Right. We're keeping the language platform-friendly. We aren't going to be graphic, but we are going to be real about what the job was.
For sure. We've pulled from biographical encyclopedias like Alcatron, film databases like IMDb and the IAFD, and some industry retrospective articles to piece this story together.
So let's start at the very beginning, because before the stage names and the videos, there was just a regular life.
Born Jennifer Montoya, New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1973.
In the Bronx, New York City.
A New Year's Eve baby from the Bronx. That just feels like it sets the stage for a big personality right off the bat.
It does.
You come into the world while the fireworks are going off.
It's definitely a strong start, and that background is crucial. She is of Cuban and Dominican descent, and I want to highlight that immediately because in the context of the 90s industry, well, heritage played a massive role in look and appeal.
How so?
Well, for a long time, the industry standard was very California blonde. But by the mid-90s, with the rise of urban culture and hip-hop, there was this shifting demand.
All right.
Her specific look, that Afro-Caribbean heritage, became a significant part of her marketability.
But she didn't stay in New York to launch this career.
No. She did what so many aspiring entertainers do. She relocated to Los Angeles, California during her teenage years.
The classic move.
If you want to be on screen, you go to where the cameras are.
Now, the sources mentioned her entry point into the industry wasn't straight into film, and this seems to be a very common pipeline in that era.
It was the standard path.
Yeah.
She started as an exotic dancer, stripping. She was working the clubs in L.A.
Okay.
And there is a detail in the biographical sources that I think is just fantastic for understanding her character. She didn't start because she was desperate. She supposedly started on a dare.
On a dare. I love that. It implies a certain level of competitive spirit.
Totally.
I bet you won't get up there.
Oh, yeah. Watch me.
Exactly. It shows fearlessness. It suggests she was comfortable with her body and comfortable with attention long before the camera started rolling.
Right.
So she's dancing, she's building a reputation in the LA scene, and then in 1994, at age 20, she makes the jump to film.
1994. The internet is barely a thing. This is the VHS era. What kind of productions is she stepping into? She began in what the industry calls pro-am style productions. Specifically, the sources point to the Debutante series associated with a producer named Ed Powers.
Right, the Dirty Debutante series, that was huge back then. The whole gimmick was that it wasn't polished.
No, not at all.
It was supposed to feel gritty and real.
Precisely. It was about authenticity. So she enters the market not as a polished starlet, but as this raw, real talent from the clubs. But then, almost immediately after she starts gaining traction, there is a massive curveball.
The pregnancy.
A huge curveball. Very shortly after her debut, Crystal Knight becomes pregnant.
Now, in most careers based on physical appearance, modeling, acting, certainly adult performance, that is usually a full stop.
You'd think so.
You'd think the agents would say, okay, congratulations, come back in 18 months when you're ready.
That's the logical assumption, and that's how mainstream Hollywood often worked. But the adult industry operates on different economics. Instead of retiring or hiding it, the industry and Crystal capitalized on it.
They leaned into the pregnancy.
Aggressively. One of the sources explicitly mentions a title she filmed called Ready to Drop 5.
Ready to Drop Volume 5.
Which implies there were at least 4 successful volumes before it.
That is. Well, it's certainly a niche.
It is, but it's a brilliant example of market segmentation. The adult industry has a micro-genre for absolutely everything.
Right.
There are collectors and audiences who are looking for reality, for life stages, for bodies that don't fit the perfect mold. By continuing to work, she tapped into a completely different demographic.
That's a really interesting point. It's almost like accidental market diversification. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was serving a specific, underserved audience.
And it kept her name in circulation when she otherwise would have vanished. But naturally, there are physical limits. After giving birth to her daughter, she went on hiatus. She stepped away from the cameras completely to be a mother.
Which is a nice reminder that these are real people with real lives off camera. But the story doesn't end there.
Not at all.
Because when she comes back, she doesn't just come back, she reintroduces herself.
This is the pivot point. Let's call it the return in late 1996.
And she looks different.
Significantly different. This is where the personal branding really kicks in. When she returns, her image has undergone a major overhaul. The sources are very specific. She returned with surgically enlarged breasts.
The classic 90s silhouette.
The Pamela Anderson effect. You have to look at the context of 1996. Baywatch is the biggest show on earth. The aesthetic in adult media was shifting aggressively toward that enhanced bombshell look.
So she goes from the natural, gritty debutante of 94 to the superstar vixen of 96.
Exactly. By altering her physical appearance, she wasn't just changing her body, she was upgrading her product to fit the current market trend. It likely increased her booking fees and changed the types of roles she was offered.
It's interesting to think of it as a business expense, like a contractor buying a new truck.
That's a great analogy.
But even with a new look, I was surprised to read about her boundaries. You'd think with a bombshell look, she'd be doing the most extreme content, but sources say she was actually pretty selective.
She was. The data shows she primarily performed in scenes with other women.
So sticking to the girl-girl genre.
Which is often considered a softer tier of the industry. It's generally less physically taxing. But when she did do scenes with men, it was very restricted.
How so?
The sources note that her male-female scenes were limited and, interestingly, often involved her real-life husband, a man named Sam.
That brings a whole different dynamic to it. It's not just work, it's a family business.
In a way, yes. It creates a controlled environment. You aren't walking onto a set with a stranger.
You're working with a partner you trust.
Exactly.
There was a technical detail from her early work that I thought was fascinating regarding this.
Right, from the Ed Powers era. The source describes a scene where the acts were simulated or non-penetrative. It shows that even early on, she was negotiating terms.
Yeah.
She wasn't just doing whatever the director yelled out, she was managing her performance.
I think that control is probably what allowed her to have the longevity she did. If you burn the candle at both ends in that industry, you don't last long.
Absolutely. Burnout is the #1 career killer. But by pacing herself, she set herself up for the next phase. And this is the part I really want to dig into, the crossover.
Yes. Because if you were a cable subscriber in 1999, you might have seen Crystal Knight doing something completely different than acting.
This is the moment she shifts from performer to personality. In 1999, she became the host of Playboy Television's Night Calls 411.
Night Calls. For the younger listeners, we have to explain what a juggernaut this was.
It was huge.
This was like the internet before the internet.
It was interactive television. People would call in to talk to the stars. It was conversational. It was funny. It was intimate, but not necessarily explicit in the way a film is.
And for Crystal, that's a huge promotion.
It's massive. Being a host requires a completely different skill set. You have to be quick-witted, you have to manage the flow of conversation, you have to project a persona.
It gave her a voice.
Exactly. She wasn't just a visual object on a screen anymore. She was the person guiding the experience.
And being a Playboy TV host, carries a certain level of mainstream acceptability. It's a credential.
It is. It puts you in the realm of celebrity, and that visibility opened the door to the music videos.
This is the stuff that cements someone in pop culture history, the hip-hop connection.
And for the listener who might be wondering, why does this matter? You have to understand the ecosystem of late 90s rap. The music video was the primary way people consumed the culture. It wasn't YouTube, it was MTV and BT.
And the budgets were insane.
Millions of dollars. And Crystal Night wasn't just in obscure videos. We are talking about the heavy hitters.
Who are we seeing on the resume?
Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, Fat Joe, R. Kelly.
That is the A-list.
It is, and here is the so what. Casting a recognizable adult film star like Crystal Night in your video was a deliberate move by these artists.
It wasn't just, we need a model.
No, they could get any model from an agency. Getting Crystal Night was a status symbol. It signaled a certain edge, showed a connection to the underground, to the street.
It was a flex.
It was a flex. It said, I have the clout to get her in my video.
It's the peak video vixen era.
Exactly. And for Crystal, it meant mainstream exposure to millions of people who might never have rented one of her films. She became part of the visual language of hip-hop.
It's wild to think about the synergy there. The rappers used her for street cred, and she used the videos for mainstream fame.
It was a mutually beneficial transaction. And remember the timeline. This is happening while she's hosting night calls.
Right.
She was everywhere.
You could flip the channel from Playboy TV to MTV and see the same person. That is a serious hustle.
It speaks to her work ethic. She was working multiple angles of the entertainment industry simultaneously. Modeling, hosting, acting, dancing.
So how long did this run last? When did she eventually step away?
According to the sources, she retired from the industry around 2005.
So she started in 94, retired in 05. That's an 11-year career.
Which, in the adult industry, is essentially a lifetime. The average career span can be as short as 18 months.
Wow.
To last over a decade is a statistical anomaly.
Do we have a sense of the volume of work?
The IAFD lists approximately 76 films.
That feels actually kind of low for a decade.
It is low if you compare it to performers who shoot every single day, but it aligns perfectly with what we discussed earlier about her boundary.
Quality over quantity.
She wasn't a volume shooter, she was a brand. Plus, that number doesn't account for the magazine covers, the photo sets for sites like Twisties and Fame Digital, or the TV hosting.
Right. Now, before we wrap up the biography, I have to ask about the name. Because when I was prepping for this, I kept running into different spellings.
Oh, this is a nightmare for archivists and historians of the genre.
What are the variations?
You see Crystal with a C, Crystal with an H. You see Crystal Knight, like the opposite of day versus night, like a warrior in armor.
And Crystal K?
And sometimes just the pseudonym Crystal K.
It really highlights the pre-social media era, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Today, you'd have a verified Instagram handle, and that would be the end of the discussion.
Exactly. Back then, you were at the mercy of whoever was typing up the VHS box cover or the magazine layout that day. The metadata was a mess.
So if you're a collector or a historian trying to track her career, how do you know who is who?
The sources actually give us a very specific forensic tool.
A forensic tool.
A tattoo, specifically a bird tattoo on her right buttock.
Look for the bird.
It sounds funny, but in an industry where physical identification is key and where old footage is often repackaged and sold under different names, that tattoo is the fingerprint.
Yeah.
It's how you verify, yes, this scene from 1998 is actually Crystal Night.
That's a great detail. It's like authenticating a painting.
Precisely.
So, looking back at all of this, Jennifer Montoya from the Bronx, the Dare to Strip, the pregnancy films, the surgical reinvention, the Playboy hosting, the Jay-Z videos, what is the big takeaway here?
If we zoom out, I think Crystal Night represents a masterclass in adaptability. She illustrates the fluidity between the underground adult industry and mainstream pop culture.
That fluidity feels so normal now, right? With OnlyFans and influencers, the line is basically gone.
Today, yes, the barrier to entry is low. But back then, it was incredibly hard to navigate. You had gatekeepers everywhere.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You had to get hired by Playboy. You couldn't just start your own channel. You had to get cast by a video director.
She had to hustle through a system that wasn't necessarily built for her to succeed in that crossover way. She had to kick the doors down.
And she did it while managing a very specific brand evolution. The shift from the natural debutante to the enhanced vixen was a calculated business move that extended her career by years. She read the room, and she adapted.
It really challenges the stereotype of the victim in the industry. She seems to have been very much in the driver's seat regarding her image and her boundaries.
Based on the sources, absolutely.
Yeah.
She managed her career like a business, not just a lifestyle.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at a figure who might be a footnote to some, but really tells a much bigger story about the media landscape of the 90s.
Definitely. She's a great lens through which to view that whole decade.
Before we wrap up, here is something I want you, the listener, to think about. We talked about her reinvention, that moment she came back post-pregnancy with a completely new, surgically enhanced look to fit the times.
Hmm.
It makes you wonder, how much of a public figure's identity is truly their own, and how much is just a reflection of what the market demands at that exact moment?
That is the eternal question of celebrity. Did she change because she wanted to, or because she knew it was the only way to stay relevant in 1996?
And honestly, in the age of social media, I think we're all asking ourselves a version of that question. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
We'll see you next time.